This will be a short demonstration of the all-new FlexSim Healthcare simulation software. I will be building a model of a small healthcare clinic. To begin with, I will import a CAD drawing. This will be the floor plan. This is a DWG file. I'll change the scale from meters to the model units of feet. Next, we'll drag and drop objects into our 3D model space. We'll begin with a registration desk. I can resize it and position it with my mouse. Next, we'll create a triage station. Place it right here. And then the waiting room. This waiting room object is actually composed of 9 individual chairs. You can edit the chairs individually by going into edit mode here. You can add chairs. You can use your mouse to drag chairs around and place them where you want and rotate them. I'm going to drop back down to the default of 9 chairs for this object and exit the edit mode. Next, let's make exam tables. There are 6 exam rooms. I'll select these 2 and edit them together, rotating them 180 degrees so the pillow's on the other side. Okay, next let's create a door. Now it's time for staff. Let's add a couple nurses. And a couple doctors. We have several different visual options to choose from for your staff, but you can customize them easily, which I'll show you in a minute. Now let's create a clerk. Place her behind the registration desk right here and rotate her. Let me show you how you can edit these staff. So I'll click on this doctor here and show you how you can change the person altogether to a male. You can change their hair or their hat, their pants, shirts, shoes, and other accessories. Now that we've created all the objects we need in our model, it's time to define the activities. We do this by creating what we call a patient process flow. This is where we will flowchart the activities associated with each patient visit. We also have the Arrivals tab here. Starts off with a source of tokens. I will create a token each half hour. There are several ways you could define the arrivals of your patients. Okay, the tokens then go into the create patient block, and we want the destination of our patients to begin at the door. Now let's work on the patient flow. As an example, let me drag the walk activity over. Connect it up to the source. This will be kicked off when every patient arrives. The destination for the walk I'll set at the desk. So now, when we reset and run our model, a patient will come in about every half hour. You can see the token enters the walk activity, and the instruction is simply to walk to the registration desk. So hopefully you can imagine how we can create a flowchart of activities of walking, escorting, processing, etc. Okay, let me delete that and create a waiting line. I realize I need a waiting line, place for patients to wait if they cannot see the clerk at the desk right away. Now let's build up our patient process flow. Rather than use single activities, I'm going to use sets of activities to speed up the modeling process. And rather than drag activities from the library on the left, I'm going to take advantage of the quick pop-up library. I'll begin by dragging a connector from the source down and release. The quick library pops up. I'll choose this activity set. It's used to have patients wait in a line and then walk up to a location to start a process time. The light blue boxes on the left are the list of activities in this activity set for the patient. The salmon colored boxes on the right are the shared resources. These resources are going to be acquired by the patient before they can be used. Let's first define the waiting line resource. To do that, I'll click on it and then use the sampler tool here to sample the waiting line object in the 3D space. Next, the location. The location, I'll sample the registration desk. And finally, the staff resource. For this, I'll use the sampler tool to sample the clerk out in the 3D space right here. Now let's rename some things. I'll rename the location resource desk, and I'll rename the activity set registration. Okay, let's check out what we have so far. I'll reset and run the model. Here comes our first patient, goes right to the desk. The next patient comes in, has to wait in line, as does the next patient. Over in the process flow, you see a token associated with each of the 3 patients. If you click on a token and click on these binoculars here, it'll center up the patient in the view and highlight them. Okay, let's reset the model. Before I continue with the process flow, I'm going to create some groups of those objects I have more than one of in the model. For instance, the beds. I'll shift-click drag to select them all, right-click on one, and then choose Location Groups, Add to a new group. This group I will call Exam Rooms. Next, the nurses. Shift-click drag to select both nurses, right-click on one, choose Staff Groups, and Add to new group. I'll put these nurses in a group called RNs. And finally, the doctors. Select them, add them to a new group, and this group I will call MDs. Alright, let's continue on with our process flow. I'll drag a connection from registration down, release, and choose this activity set here to escort or wait area. Rename it triage or wait. The location block I'll rename triage. The staff resource I'll rename RNs for triage. Click on triage and sample for the location, the triage location out in the model space. Next, I'll click on the staff resource and sample the RNs, and instead of choosing a specific RN, I'll choose the group RNs. And finally, the waiting area, I'll sample the waiting room. These chairs here. The next thing we want to do in our process flow is take a patient back to a room, if a room is available. So I'll click and drag a connector from triage down, release, and choose the same activity set we had before. I'll rename it room or wait. I'll rename the location exam room and the staff RNs for room. Click on the exam room, use the sampler, and sample one of the rooms, one of the beds out in the 3D space, and choose exam rooms, the group. It now shows the location as being any member of exam rooms. Next, for the RN, I'm going to choose the same RN I used before. To do that, I'll just sample the resource block up above. Notice the change in the icon and name of the resource block, indicating use of an earlier resource. For the waiting area, I'll simply sample the chairs. Next, we're going to have the doctor see the patient. For this, we'll use an activity set that is called Process with Staff, this one right here. Change the name of the staff to MD Exam. Change the name of this set to MD Exam. Click on this staff resource block and sample one of the doctors out in the 3D space and choose their group, MDs. Any member of MDs. On the walk activity, the person walking will be the doctor and the destination needs to be the patient. We don't know where the patient will be, so we simply say walk to where the patient is. The process time will be the exam time. Next, we're going to have the patient simply walk out. And then the last activity needs to be one called remove patient to remove the patient from the model. Let's make the destination of the walk activity be the door. And we're finished with the process flow. Let's reposition our process flow, resize it so we can see the whole thing, and then reset and run the model and test it. First patient arrives, gets triaged, gets put in a bed, then the doctor sees him and the patient leaves. This patient comes in, has to wait, then is taken to triage, then taken back to a room, seen by a doctor, and so on. It looks like everything is working the way we want it. Let's take a look at the default process time for the MD exam and maybe change it. Right now it's an exponential distribution, location value 0, scale of 10, and you can see from the little chart we provide here what 1,000 samples would look like from that distribution. Rather than this exponential distribution, I'm going to choose the log normal mean standard deviation distribution. It looks like this. Change the mean to 30, standard deviation to 10, has a long right tail, meaning some process times take much longer than others. But the majority of process times are around 24. Okay, let's test our model. We'll reset, hit the run button. Here comes our first patient. Let's watch. The patient is escorted to triage. Don't worry about patients and staff walking through walls and beds and stuff right at this point. We'll put in walking paths later. Here comes the doctor for the exam, and another patient arrives. This patient is also escorted to triage. Our first patient is leaving, and another patient arrives. After being registered, takes a seat in the waiting room because there's not a triage location open for him, even though there is another nurse available. Here comes another patient. Okay, looks like everything's working just great. Okay, I want to make some charts and graphs for the model. One of the charts I want to make is a milestone chart. So I'm going to insert a milestone right here. It'll be for after the patient is brought to their room. And we'll call this milestone roomed. I also want to add a milestone right here after the doctor walks to their room. This will be a milestone for seeing the doctor. So I'll call it see doctor. Resize this a little bit. Okay. There's also one small change I want to make to the process flow. I want to move this release exam room down here after the doctor sees the patient. This will make it a little more accurate. Okay, let's add a dashboard and put some charts in here. Start off with a stay time bar chart. Stay time bar chart. Change it from seconds to minutes for the time units. And resize it a little bit. Okay, next I want to add an average wait time chart, wait time of the patient. It'll also be a bar chart. Time units is already minutes. Say okay and resize. Okay, let's see. Let's do an average day combined bar chart. I'm going to do it for the RNs and the MDs. Resize it. Okay. Let me add another dashboard. And I want to put an average milestone times chart in it. Okay, change time units to minutes. And see, here's my milestones: roomed, see doctor, and there's always the removed milestone for when the patient is removed from the model. And that'll be overall length of stay. Okay, next let's make an average distance traveled plot for the patients. Change the travel units from meters to feet. Resize it. Okay, last let's make a patient census versus time plot, showing how many patients are in the model as time progresses. Okay, let's reset, run, see if all of our charts and graphs are working. Looks good for this dashboard, and this dashboard's charts are working as well. Okay, let's stop, reset our model, and I want to close off a couple things here so that we can create some walking paths easy. Let me save this current view, and then I'll change to a top view and uncheck perspective. Okay, zoom in here and center it up, and ready to add what we call an A-star system. An A-star system is a bounded grid composed of barriers and dividers that travelers must negotiate as they try to find their shortest path to their destination. We'll begin by adding the grid. First I'll click on the grid and then click and drag a bounding box. Let's change the node spacing to 2. Let's move this icon representing the A-star grid up and change its settings. We'll show the grid. Reset and see the yellow grid. Alright, let's make dividers. I'm just going to quickly create a chain of nodes. These connected nodes are called dividers. When I finish a chain, I right click to release it and start a new chain by left clicking. Go all the way up across the top here and down, over, right click, start a new one right here, right click, another one, right click, and finish that off. Okay, that should be good. Okay, let's add the staff in some of the locations as members of the A-star system. Okay, so all these locations, the multi-location chairs, and all the staff. Okay. Now let's reset, run the model, and see what we have. Slow it down a little bit. I don't like the way they're traveling from the registration desk to the triage desk, so let me add a divider. I'll just click right across here. Okay, let's see what that did. Reset, run. That's looking better. You can continually tweak things by moving these dividers around. Also note in the library there's mandatory path and preferred path that can help. I'm going to switch back to the saved perspective view and edit the A-star settings. I'm going to hide the display of the barriers and boundaries. And let's start the model running again. Okay, this concludes our model building demonstration of a healthcare clinic. I hope you enjoyed it.